What up, y'all? DCFAYGOGUY. Today we're going to be reviewing the brand new album from Linkin Park, From Zero. Today marks the day that the deluxe edition of the album has come out. The album originally, the standard edition, dropped back in November. And let me tell you about this album. This album blew me the fuck away. Did not expect to love this album that much. This is the first Linkin Park album I've ever reviewed, and I wanted to do it for this one because I really like the kind of theme, the vibe, what this album really represents, and that is Linkin Park kind of resetting from zero. Kind of that double entendre because the band used to be called Zero before becoming Hybrid Theory, before becoming Linkin Park. So I really love that aspect of the album. Absolutely blown away by this album. A little bit of background into me and Linkin Park for those who don't know. I've never really considered myself a hardcore fan. I've for many years considered myself a very casual fan. Obviously, I loved Hybrid Theory, heard it back in 2003 when it was, still very new. Actually, 2002 would have been when that dropped. In the end, was on the radio everywhere. Loved that song. My sister's boyfriend at the time had a copy of Hybrid Theory. I was playing it quite consistently, going through finding the songs that I liked with In the End and One Step Closer, Crawling being some of my standouts. But that really started my journey into becoming like a casual fan into Linkin Park. And actually in the summer of 2002, In the End, again, everywhere on the radio, absolutely loved that. And what I loved about it was the piano. Now, my sister at the time had been listening to Insane Clown Posse for 5 years or so. Sometime in 97, 98 was when she found them. And that was always in the background as well. And it was In the End that love for In the End, one night in my sister's room, playing my Game Boy, Pass Me By from ICP comes on, has a similar piano. So Linkin Park was very much like a door for me to finally become a juggalo and start listening to ICP. Like, my sister always played it in the background, and it was just kind of there in the background for me, but I never really clung to it until that night. And In the End is what I attribute to that happening. So I've always been a casual Linkin Park fan in the background, even as I was really diving into becoming a juggalo and listening to ICP. So for many years, I was one of those fans that was like, I only like Hybrid Theory, I only like Meteor, all the rest of their albums suck. I never really fully dove into a lot of it. I knew there were songs from Minutes to Midnight that I liked. Shadow of the Day is probably my favorite song from that album. So I don't know why I kind of stuck to that narrative in my head of I only like the first two albums, because it just wasn't true. Diving into Minutes to Midnight, I really started to listen to more of it, and I liked it. And actually, for the longest time, I had Hybrid Theory and Meteor. Those were the only two CDs I owned. I think sometime in 2014 then, I finally went and got Minutes to Midnight. I was like, I do like enough of this album to buy it, so I ended up buying it, and since then, I love that album front to back as well. But a couple years ago, I realized that I never really fully dove into all of their other albums, so I finally did that, and I absolutely fell in love with all of it. Really, the only album that kind of doesn't hit as well as the rest of them is One More Light. It just never really sat with me on that sound, so I, just never really got into it. So when this album was coming out, I wasn't really keeping up with the countdown that they were having and the announcement that they were going to have. The announcement just kind of happened, and I watched their little performance that they had, and I was like, okay, I checked out the single, The Emptiness Machine, and I was like, I actually really like this single a lot. I'm excited for this album because I wanted to hear, what they put together. They had a huge monumental task, not of replacing Chester, but bringing the band back together. And that is not a position that I envy. I would not have wanted to be in that position. And, I feel that they truly did it right. They took the time that they needed as friends of Chester and as bandmates of Chester to mourn and grieve and, process and heal. So the way that this album came about, absolutely fucking in love with it. I love the rebirth. I love that they're carrying on. I firmly believe that Chester would be completely proud of them. I know there's a lot of mixed reactions in, the fandom and not even non-fans. I would say there's a lot of not Linkin Park fans that are commenting on it just to comment on it, So I think that the way that they did it was perfect, and the way that this album turned out is absolutely amazing. It straight up feels like an homage to all of their previous work, and I think that that was the intention. And it very much feels like this kind of sampler, if you will, of these are all the different styles we can do. These are all the different styles we have done. So I'm curious where they're going to go from here, but absolutely love From Zero. I'm not going to go through it. I'm not going to play you guys all the tracks. I'm just going to kind of talk about the tracks here. I think everybody has probably heard the song, has heard the album. If you haven't heard the album, then you could easily go listen to it. It's everywhere. Like I said, the deluxe edition has dropped today. This album, absolutely fell in love with it on the very first listen, and it's been in constant rotation since it dropped. I love this album from front to back. There's not a single song on this that I skip. The only one that has really kind of had the urge to skip early in listenings, and maybe depending on the mood I'm in, is Casualty. It goes very punky and very like aggressive. It's weirdly placed on the album because you have a very soft, kind of sad song, and then it goes into this very aggressive. But that almost feels like that was on purpose and by design. The album slows down a little bit and then picks right back up. So I think that it was very well placed, but it definitely, on listens, makes it kind of difficult to get into. So I want to go through and I want to talk about my top 5 songs and give you guys my favorite. So in my top 5, I have The Emptiness Machine, Heavy as the Crown, Over Each Other, Stained, and Good Things Go. Obviously, I talked about The Emptiness Machine a little bit. This was the debut single that they had. And when I first listened to this, you know, everything was going kind of typically for me. You know, you had fucking Mike Shinoda come in on the first verse. You had the chorus. And it felt very familiar. It felt very Linkin Park. It sounded like something you would hear off of like 1,000 Suns, maybe even off of Living Things, possibly off of like Minutes to Midnight. That's just kind of the vibe that it gave me. So then when you got through with the chorus and you had Emily come in and she just starts singing, and I think I tweeted this over on Twitter, that holy shit, they found someone who sounds just like Chester. And when I said this, it was so on the nose and it was so reactive when I put that out there. Because she doesn't sound exactly like Chester, but the way that she can sing and the way that she can scream is like the way that he could do it without sounding like him. And I know Mike Shinoda's been in multiple interviews saying that they could have gone and done that. They could have found themselves another Chester. There are cover bands out there where they sound, and he said this in interviews, eerily similar to Chester. And it's for him, he said it was weird. And I would agree that to me, if they would have went that route, I don't think I would have been as much of a fan, because it would have definitely felt like they were replacing him. And this did not feel like that at all. But when she comes in, going around like a revolver, I immediately was like, holy shit. I kind of like in my head was like thinking of how Chester would have sounded if he sang that, and then listened to her do it. And it was like, fuck, she can do this. Like immediately was like, she can fucking do this. So it had me excited for the album to drop. I think they did that show and they had that performance where they did the song, dropped the single. That was what, September of last year? And the album didn't come out until November. I made it a point not to listen to the song any more than that. I listened to it the one time. I was like, I'm just going to wait for the album. And boy, am I glad I did. So Emptiness Machine definitely has to be in my top 5. Really because of that moment, that very reactive, like, oh shit, they fucking found somebody who can do this. So actually really had me fucking super excited. So then one of my other top 5s was Heavy is the Crown. This song here straight up feels like if they didn't have Emily do any parts of it and they just had Mike Shinoda and maybe just put it out as like a fucking instrumental with Mike Shinoda's parts, I would have firmly said like this is definitely some Meteora leftovers. That's what it felt like. Maybe Minutes to Midnight a little bit. They kind of have that like do 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 like for what they did, I think 2009 for the New Divide from Transformers. That very was callback-ish to that for me, but the actual whole song itself, like instrument-wise, felt like something you would hear on Meteora. So definitely love that. I love the scream at the end with Emily. Absolutely love Heavy is the Crown. Great song. Now, the one that really surprised me, I was blown away by it, was Over Each Other. This very quickly in the album, slows things down. You get a very deep, very kind of sad song. Absolutely love this because I love the concept of like you're just fighting with whoever you're with, whether it's a friend, partner, whomever. You guys just constantly can't get fucking along. You're just always fighting. You're always talking over each other. And then in the end, you know, she's like, I want to hear your side. You know, I'm done talking over you. I'm going to hear you now. And that's so powerful. I think a lot of people really kind of fail at that when they're going through issues. It's just like hitting pause on yourself, listening to the other person. It's something I have had to do a lot. It's something that I work on a lot. I'm just, you know, trying to hit pause on me and, you know, just be there for the other person and go, you know, try to figure out and help them work through what they're feeling. So it's definitely a relatable song in that aspect. Stained is the other one that I have in my top 5. This one here hits so close to home because I have family members and I have people in my life that have stained. They have stained hands. They've just not treated me right. I feel they haven't really valued me as a person. And their hands are stained and they are constantly trying to come back in and just keep doing it. So Stained was a song that absolutely really fucking hit close to home for me. So had to put it in my top 5. And then I put Good Things to Go in my top 5 because this is a great album closer. It ties everything up very nicely. Really kind of jumping back to Over Each Other, maybe a little bit with Stained. I like the concept of like sometimes you just, you know, sometimes bad things go where the good things go and you're not you. You're just not able to communicate what you need to communicate and you're just having trouble with that. So it's definitely very heartfelt. And I absolutely love how at the end of the song you get that, oh, and it really loops the album back in. And I'm curious how they're going to work that into this deluxe edition of the album because I really love that the album does that. It makes the replay value of the album very much there. So I'm curious if on the deluxe edition they're going to have that kind of taken out and maybe throw it onto the end of the album with the 3 bonus tracks. Probably not, because I think it's supposed to be a 2-disc album, right? So I think the way that you would do it is you'd listen to disc 1. But, you know, this is the age of digital, so a lot of people are probably going to listen to it on digital. I know I am. I do have plans to eventually someday grab the album, grab the CD. But it would be interesting for them to take that little outro and slap it at the end of the bonus tracks just to kind of help that retie everything together. And I have a feeling that that's not going to be the case. So, you know, maybe the album needs to be reordered a little bit. Good Things to Go needs to end the album even on the deluxe version. Maybe, I don't know. I may tinker around with that. But yeah, I don't know what more I can say about this album without just kind of rambling on and repeating myself. I just absolutely love this. I think that this was for me, like a breath of fresh air, because it was very much in the air of what is Linkin Park going to do? What could they possibly do to keep making music? Do they just go on without Chester and not have another vocalist? I think that they nailed it on picking Emily. I know she is a very controversial person, but when you do the research and you put yourself in her shoes and you really kind of think outside the box and not be so narrow-minded on it, I think they made a very fine choice. And I'm very excited to see where they go from here. Yeah, again, I don't know what else to say about this album. I absolutely fucking love it. I could ramble on about it just, you know, forever. Not forever, but for a while. And, you know, time is precious, so I'm not going to take any more of your guys' time rambling about this album. If you have listened to From Zero and you like it, tell me down below what it is that you like about the album. What are your favorite tracks? I thank you guys for watching, and I will see you guys next time.